It's Dave's. Okay, gotcha. Well, nice to be happily surprised instead of unhappily surprised.
We could sign the day before. That would be,
And we're waiting
that
for
would save me a lot of stress.
Crystal
All the
also.
stuff I gotta do that day, it's really, it's like a
Because
mini-
she's supposed to have the ethics language for us tonight.
No, I'm not leaving town. No, I just got, it's a bit of a stressful engagement if you, okay, let me get this. But go, hold it on, council, I know you have.
I am, but
I
I'm,
thought there, but
no, I know we have a quorum, but on the other hand, we don't have legal here yet. She's usually here on the dot. No, she's,
okay.
that's communication.
Communication.
Now, I don't know why that's there, because that's not on the agenda.
Communication breakdown. All right.
This is the petition.
Oh, man.
The memo from,
Boy, I got a lot of
Yeah,
work done today.
that petition is the
rare
original.
days.
I don't know why it's,
That's okay, you got enough work done to beat the band.
so I think this is out, we had sent it over to Mike McManus.
okay, yeah.
But I don't think we put it
I'm
on the
going to the-
agenda because we didn't think he had time. Hello.
Client hired me to write a
We
trust,
now have our legal
For his
counsel
wife.
available, so
so
when
I'll
you,
make sure there ain't big tweaks in the trust law, so I'll be at the law library. That's gonna be like a day and a half. To me it is.
So maybe,
are folks ready to roll?
yeah, ready.
Crystal, get situated. Yeah, I did not see it.
Yeah, I get emails.
No.
I checked up till pretty much like now.
I didn't get anything. Yeah. Maybe,
But we have hard copies, so.
There should be an extra one.
Of course he wants a copy.
What's it a copy of?
Ethics.
Ethics? I have ethics.
that's what you did
Well,
with
read
last
through it
time.
and see.
Yeah,
See, read through and see if you have them all.
Oh, boy.
That's a joke.
The last one?
Okay, so let's. He must be here for the solar.
Oh, the Kelly Way, oh. Is that the public hearing?
Okay, so
Yeah, let's,
I hereby call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. It is 6:35 on Tuesday, November 28th. With me, I have Counselor Lopez, I'm Counselor Vacan. To my right is Counselor Bartley. In the chambers, we have Counselor McGivern and Counselor Leahy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
An extra agenda
So
over there. You have an agenda?
I'm open to entertaining a motion to go out of order.
Sorry.
I'll,
Thank you.
I'd like to
Thanks,
make a
Jeff.
motion to suspend and go out of order, take up item 5.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So item 5 was filed by Counselor McGee, ordered that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 38H, the City Council approve and ratify an agreement between the City of Holyoke and C2 Mass Kelly Way Solar LLC for payment in lieu of taxes pilot of certain personal property tax obligations for the property located at 505 Kelly Way. So I put this on the agenda. It came in just late. but we haven't had a chance to get any feedback back from the assessor's office yet, but I wanted to take it up because I think this project's been online for quite a while. I don't know if we'll be able to get all our questions answered tonight, but, all right. So, is there a motion to suspend rules?
So moved.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So on behalf of the applicant,
Yes.
we know who you are, but people
Attorney
watching.
Thomas Wilson, 98 Lower Westfield Road, Holyoke, Mass., for the applicant CS2 Kelly Way LLC. And this was a project that was originally started by SHR Energy. There actually, if you look in the Registry of Deeds, there are some planning board stipulations and things, and at the last second, their financing kind of fell through, so the property's been sitting there. In fact, SHR, I think, lost a large deposit because they couldn't do it, and I received a call about maybe beginning in November. These people are going to do the same project, they're just coming in to do it, and they
So
don't
it's
need
a whole
financing.
new thing.
Well, it's a whole new company doing the exact same thing. They're just taking the space that everybody, that these people, they're gonna buy the same property that SHR was supposed to buy and never did. And they're gonna put the same amount of solar panels, the same building, the same construction, the same everything, just that they're an entity that, I guess, has money and doesn't need financing. So they're-
But do they not need to go through the same process that
I don't believe it-
SHR did?
I don't believe so, because SHR, that's a non-residential area.
Correct.
So we didn't have to go on by special permit.
No, but they still had to go to the planning board.
Well, the planning board for the property put on notice of decision, solar site plan review, Kelly Way Solar 2 conditions at for this property in last year. And basically, they passed it, and before the issuance of a building permit, and my understanding is that this goes with the land as long as they're gonna do the exact, they're not changing this at all. It's gonna be the exact same, they're just doing the building instead of SHR.
I hear what you're saying, but I thought all these permits went to the company,
And I thought they
project
ran-
by project,
I thought
not
they ran
with the land.
I thought they ran with the land.
Oh, one way to find out.
But I think we'll need to suspend rules and see if we can get an answer to that.
So moved.
You wanna see what I'm talking about?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The purpose of the suspension of rules was so legal can address us, just for those watching. I forget to, they don't know what.
Yep.
We need to do to three.
No, five. We're starting from the bottom.
Counselor Lisi has joined us.
Mike Tob.
I'd have to look. I don't know off the top of my head. I think it depends on what kind of special permit as well. I'd have to get back to you. I don't know.
Yeah, I really think they have to go through the process with the planning board. It's only that the planning board is determining the permit, that the city council is not, but still the applicant, it doesn't go with the land.
I understand that, but the only thing on is the pilot right now.
Right, but I don't see how we can act on a pilot if there's not an approved project.
Oh, I mean,
I mean, we can table it, we won't throw it away or anything, but I think we need an answer to that question. The question before us is if the approval of the special permit by the planning board that went to SHR can be just transferred to another company because SHR didn't have the funding, and I don't think it can, because it doesn't go with the land.
Planning is meeting today, right?
Right, but I don't think this is before them.
Oh, no, okay, I don't know. I didn't see the agenda.
You know, I've never heard of a special permit running with the land.
Well, we just created that with the drive-through.
But that was a special ordinance change, changing the whole,
We changed the conditions.
right.
so you're saying we have to go again through the process because there's just a new owner?
Well, if there was a new owner for a special permit in the similar situation before city council, it wouldn't flow to the new owner. They would have to come back in, and I believe it's the same. It's only simply that board is making the determination, not the city council. And the special permits are not transferable under our ordinances, as far as I know.
All right, well, I guess I'll come back then, because I thought it was, that was my understanding. But
I'm only seeking clarification, but
I can take a look and see what I can research so that, if possible, we can do it tonight, but.
well,
We can put
Counselor
it back on the
McGivern?
table and then-
we can table it. It's not that it will go away. We'll
This has
keep
been
it
an
in-
issue for a long time, and I've always maintained that special permits, which are exceptions to the zoning text, do go to the land or do go to the property. Because otherwise, I've said this in the overlay district and a number of different places, otherwise, why would people be making, sometimes significant investments in subject to lose that investment if the special permit is not something that can be transferable? Special permits for other purposes, we tend to give to the ownership, to the petitioner themselves. But I've always said the interpretation of them being that way for zoning is a wrong interpretation or misguided.
Well, I just would like to have one. Because typically we don't do that with the special permits. So I just want clarification on it. I didn't realize it was a change in ownership. I just thought it was the old project coming in for the pilot. But it's a new project.
actually, now that I think, I'm wondering if the pilot was approved prior with SHR Energy.
Let's see.
And I think that might be,
That would be a different issue,
sorry.
but nonetheless, a one
Catch
worth
this.
asking, checking on. Okay.
Well,
It's,
I was gonna motion to table, but let's-
okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
and motion, what's your pleasure, Madam Chair? Do you want to?
If we can go to 4, I'd just like,
Sure, motion, take number 4 off the table?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So item 4 was filed by Counselor Jordan. Order due to safety concerns, the transfer of money or goods between a motorist or its occupants and a pedestrian on any traveled portion of a road shall be prohibited. If a vehicle is legally parked and/or on private property, then this shall not apply. This was an order that came up under discussion previously under a different order that we were having some debate about. And through legal and Counselor Jordan, we were given some good advice, which has now come before us formally. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard on this?
Just wanna,
Counselor Lopez?
what will be the fine? I know that if I know I read about $50 for whoever's giving money. I mean, $50 is peanuts. I wanted to do like $200, $300.
The fine for the $50 was related to the adoption of the state law, and that
Okay.
was the fine in the state law. This would now be a separate ordinance, so we could we could recommend to the council, I think, the wish of the body relative to that.
Well, that's only my opinion, but I think that $50 is not good.
So do you want to make that in the form of
I would like to make a
motion?
formal motion that we go to $200.
Would you see that as an escalating fine, starting with something less, or, like first,
Yeah,
second,
like a
third
scale. I know what
kind
you're
of
saying.
thing?
Well, if we go 100, the first warning, 100 and 200 maybe.
Anybody wanting to
wanna
second
do
that for
$25?
purpose of discussion, or maybe Counselor Bartley wants to weigh in? We can discuss it without a second if people wish.
Yeah,
Counselor Bartley?
I don't want to second that at this point.
No, I'm not hearing a
I'm
second.
not opposed to it right now.
So
but
we're
I
not discussing an
Okay.
amendment.
Right, so the maker is on his way, or?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so I think I understand the intent, and I guess I'm warm to supporting it, but do we have a thought from our law department as to this aspect of whether or not this is free
We
speech?
do, and under suspension of rules.
Okay, that would be
from
wonderful.
Crystal, you
We
could weigh in, that would be great.
Hear that?
So this actually came to me just in talks with the chief about when Councilor Vacan's order came up regarding Mass General laws and kind of some other creative law enforcement, I guess. So the idea behind this is that instead of trying to prohibit people's free speech, let's look at the safety concern of these people standing near public roadways. So the idea being that you would ticket the cars for either, I know there's been issues, and maybe not all the time, but slamming their brakes to try and give people money, or food or discussion. And it's not just about panhandling, it's about anytime people are in the roadway and they stop to chat with a friend they see on the side of the road and hand them something. The idea being that it's on public roadways, you can still donate money, pull off to the side, park. If people want to, do charitable organizations on the sidewalk, that's okay here, and I think that's why the caveat is in there that if a vehicle is legally parked and on private property then this ordinance won't apply, being that, there's a time and a place, and we're looking at the safety of people in the middle of roadways. So we're trying to be a little more creative here, and I think if we can ticket the cars, it's not prohibiting people from standing there, they're more than welcome to, but we'd prefer that for the safety of everyone, that if there's going to be any transactions, that it's off to the side of the road.
Okay, and when you're having these conversations with the chief, did he at all indicate anything about enforcement?
So the thought being, I know you had talked about fines. I asked him what he thought maybe a good amount would be, and he suggested $75. I don't know where that comes from. I assume his expertise in dealing with, fines against vehicles and that sort of thing. But as far as his enforcement, obviously, it's going to be up to the police to handle that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to speak on their behalf.
I don't have a problem with the fine or Council Lopez's fines. I mean, we can, I'll probably make a motion at some point to put this into legal form so that we can review it. But I've just thought that maybe you could give us, if he didn't give any indication that he didn't, but I don't know if the chief wants to take this on.
This actually came from him. This was just, a conversation that's been ongoing of, I know it's been brought up in council before about the safety concerns, not just, the visual of panhandling, because that's not the issue. It's their free speech, they can stand there, but the safety of people standing in a median or, standing out into traffic. And it's not just about panhandling. Right. It would also go to any charitable organization standing in traffic. Mm-hmm. They would also have to comply with this, or, like I said, your friends running into the street to grab something from your car, that's not okay either. So it was more looking at that aspect, and I don't know if, there's going to be warnings initially to kind of get people focusing on it. Signs going up may be helpful in that aspect, just like littering, something along those lines, so that people are aware and it's not just a ticket on the side of the street.
Okay, that gives you some comfort. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask?
Councilor
question?
McGivern?
Crystal, my understanding was the chief of police could give permission to the example fire department to do the boot campaign for muscular dystrophy. Is that?
I mean, I haven't talked to him about that aspect. I did mention that this is going to have to be dealt with across the board. You obviously can't favor certain people versus others. I think that goes against what this is trying to do. I mean, if it's a safety concern, it would be a safety concern for everybody.
So I take that as a no?
I haven't talked with the chief on that aspect. I don't know if they would give special treatment, but
Your yes or no depends on how I vote on this, because we were led to believe the fire department could continue with
that.
Just to clarify, under the law that we adopted, that chapter, 85, it specifically said that the people couldn't go into the traffic, but it also specifically said that the chief could grant permits to people to do fundraising. Now, I don't think it specified how, so maybe the how would have to be a little different or something, than it has been. But that adoption of that chapter did not prohibit that from happening.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to put this into legal form and bring it back to a future meeting.
Do we want to address the idea of a fine as an amendment?
Well,
Does the-
if I may, Madam Chair?
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, I think if we put it into legal form, we're going to take a look at it. I think at that point, we can certainly talk about the fines, and if this was generated from the chief, I probably would want to support his fine idea anyhow. It seemed like a
Well, do you want
reasonable.
to just start with that so it's included in the legal form?
Oh, sure. If that's what you want, then I'll make the motion to have a fine at $75.
Second that.
All in favor
Aye.
on that amendment? Aye.
No.
And I'll make a motion, put this into legal form
I want to go higher. but
as
I mean,
amended.
Is
If I could get an answer to my question, I would
Is
appreciate
there a
it.
second? Under discussion, Counselor McGivern,
I would appreciate an answer before our council meeting to my question.
relative to the impact on the boot drive?
I think it needs to be enforced across the board. I don't know that there should be any special treatment. I think then you run the risk of a different situation regarding First Amendment rights, and then you're looking at more of a, is this against, just panhandlers again, or is this really a safety issue? If you're going to let people out there because they have a permit, I think that goes against the idea that it's for a safety issue.
Even if I may,
Counselor Lopez?
even if you go to the DPW and request closing partial of the street or something like that legally.
But then it wouldn't be a public, it would be more of a private way situation, I think, at that point.
But that's doable. I mean, if the fire department wants to close half of Whitney Avenue or whatever, I think that's getting a permit from the DPW.
Or you'd even look at, a sidewalk. They don't have to not do it at all. They just can't be out in the
Okay.
middle of the street.
Right, and just for clarification, the language specifically says any traveled portion of the road. So if a portion of the road was made so it was not being traveled, then you've changed the circumstances.
I'll be voting no. Got my answer.
Okay, so we have a motion before us as amended to put this into legal form and have it come back to the committee
That's the
at
motion,
our
yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
You want to go back to regular order, Madam Chair, or?
Yes, please, thank
Okay,
you.
motion to take number 1 off the table.
I would note Counselor Jordan has joined us.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 1, filed by Counselor Lisi, ordered that the City Council Ordinance Committee hold a joint public hearing with the Planning Board on the creation of zoning ordinances related to recreational marijuana retail locations. If I could ask for, I'm going to clarify that in a minute, to take these up as a package, because we've always been dealing with them together.
Motion to suspend the rules, take them up as a package.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And item 2, filed by Counselor Lisi, ordered that the City Council Ordinance Committee hold a joint public hearing with the Planning Board on the creation of zoning ordinances related to recreational marijuana cultivation and production. So a number of us were here last night for charter and rules, and we've been undertaking a review of the rules. And part of a review of the rules indicated that at our last city council meeting, we needed to be functioning under Rule 37, which was not recognized at the time of the meeting. And I'll read the pertinent portion of our Rule 37 so that people can understand why this is before us. It says, if the city solicitor, and I'm summarizing, does not agree that an ordinance should go into legal form, it is in effect, by their failure to put it into legal form, effectively sent back to the committee. So that was why some people were objecting to not having the legal form in front of them at the city council meeting. That is because the clerk properly did not copy it into legal form out to the council because it had been sent back by the city solicitor. So the rule further states that if after the draft of a proposed ordinance has been returned to the committee by the city solicitor disapproved, and after further consideration, the committee or a minority thereof decide to report the ordinance to the council unchanged, the draft shall thereupon be filed with the city clerk, who shall cause the same to be printed in printed copies showing thereon the disapproval of the city solicitor mailed to the mayor, city solicitor, and each member of the city council in the same manner herein provided for ordinances approved by the city councilor. And so because of that rule, we're required to review the matter again and then bring it to the back properly to the council. Councilor McGivern?
Couple things. One, for the rule, we didn't discuss Rule 37 last night. Two, I disagree with the discussion taking place this evening because the city council voted to table this at the city council level. And perhaps, Rule 37 should have been reviewed, and perhaps we should review Rule 37 with the entire city council, understanding that this needs to go back to committee for that rule, whether you agree or disagree. And I say that because there are a lot of city councilors that are very confused that this is on the agenda this evening and don't think it's going to be discussed because they think it's just a mistake that it's on the agenda because they believe it's on the table at the full, including the city clerk, at the full city council level. And finally, the law department's wrong on this one. Legal form is putting the language into legal form for which the city council needs to adopt it. I agree with that. The law department can't refuse to put it into legal form because they say we can't vote on it for another reason, which is the planning board status on their public hearing. The law department can tell us we're wrong, but they have to put this into legal form. There is no reason they cannot put it into legal form the way it came out of committee.
So so just to further read out of our rule, it states that the city solicitor shall forthwith examine the same, and if he disapproves of the form and legal character thereof, shall signify his disapproval thereon and return the same to the committee. And if he approves of the form and legal character thereon, shall signify his approval thereon and transmit the same to the city clerk, who shall cause the same to be printed, et cetera, et cetera. So that is just...
But that hasn't happened at the city clerk level either. It's still in the jacket as on the table at the city clerk's office.
However, the city clerk did not copy and forward the legal form to the full council because the city solicitor had disapproved of it. And so then from the city clerk's perspective, it remained in ordinance committee per this rule. And I wasn't meaning...
I spoke to the city clerk, and the city clerk believes this is on the table, is what I'm trying to say.
Correct. And
most city councilors think this is on the table at the city council.
Correct. And it is. And we have a conflict between it being tabled in city council and Rule 37. So it is tabled at city council. However, because of our own rules, and I'm not saying we discussed it last night in charter and rules, but the review of the rules took place because we were looking at the rules in charter and rules. We did not discuss it, and I didn't mean to imply that we had, just that this is kind of what made us all be looking at the rules, again, I think a little more thoroughly. And so because we were in conflict with our own rules, I put it on the agenda so that we can review it, so that we will not be out of order in some fashion with our own rules. And so that the city councilors who objected to not having the legal form will also have the legal form.
We
Because-
have the legal form, according to Brenna. She said she
No,
sent it
people
out on Monday.
people at the meeting said they did not have
They
the
didn't get it
legal
in their
form.
packets. She sent it out on Monday.
She sent it out on Monday, but she sent
So-
it out nonetheless.
True. That is true.
Well, I'm just saying that there was noted objection at the city council meeting relative to that. Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, thanks. What I think it should be noted here, and what I just thought was good housekeeping, because I agree with everything Joe said, and I agree with everything you said, and what Rebecca said. So,
Mark this down.
yeah, check, check, check.
Diplomat.
Everybody's right on the point. Here's the point. Moving forward, we should acknowledge that what occurred in Rule 37 is the ordinance committee should simply take note and make a motion this evening to just say that we take note of the solicitor's objection and recommend that the item be considered unchanged for the body before it, period. There's no discussion this evening about the merits of the proposal, simply taking a administrative acknowledgement of the solicitor objecting and that the ordinance committee recommends that the body continue with the process. That's it. I mean, there's a couple other things we could do. We could suspend Rule 37. We could always vote to do that, which is within the rules. You can suspend any rule. The other thing you can also could have considered, which I think we're covering that base for the next meeting already, is, we could have convened a meeting of the ordinance committee at the next city council meeting to just say, we're taking note of the fact that the solicitor and to continue to proceed with the matter at hand. I think in the ideal scenario, I think what would have happened was, in the exact wording of the rule, probably it should have went back to ordinance. Ordinance at this meeting would have then said, we voted out unchanged, period. It would have been helpful if the law department had done that, but they didn't. So we're dealing with the fact that the law department didn't raise that objection or say it was not properly before the body at the last meeting or any of that type of stuff. They could have just simply sent it back to committee, and the law department's welcome to weigh in on any of this. I don't mean this in any negative way. I'm just saying is, if that is going to be the way we're going to do it, then that's what should have happened. But what happened instead was basically the law department objected, the clerk doing her job, she sent it out on Monday anyways, notwithstanding, and the council had it before it, which is fine. But we just need to, the ordinance committee, I think, just to comply with the spirit of Rule 37, should just acknowledge the fact that there was an objection raised by the city solicitor, and the committee votes to continue the process, to tell the council to continue to move forward with the item as tabled, and do whatever it wishes to do. If the full council wishes to amend it, vote on it unchanged, whatever the will of the body is.
Thank you. I also want to note under this discussion that we all received a correspondence relative to content of this ordinance sent out to the full council. And so I think it actually would be improper for us to take this up tonight, because I think we can't be debating and discussing changes to ordinances amongst the whole body on email. I think we're running into an open meeting problem doing that kind of back and forth. So my intention is to read into the record the core pieces of the communication, not for action by this body, but that those things may then be considered by the full council as potential amendments at the full council meeting. We received an email from Marcos Marrero, who was giving feedback relative to two specific items in the draft. And he had in the past also given us feedback relative to the titling of the ordinance making it marijuana rather than cannabis. And so in this communication, he further offered that under section 7.10.54,
I'm gonna object and say I don't think it's necessary to read it in because, number one, we've all agreed that these items are not properly before us for discussion, and number two, he already communicated it to the full council. There hasn't been a discussion, but he communicated this information to the full council via email.
right, so, and then there was some response as to whether we should be or should not be discussing it, but it is a communication that came to the committee, and I think it should be in the record.
It came to the full council as far as I understand. So it is,
Well, in at least what I read, he indicated that he sent it because it was on our agenda. So I interpreted that to mean it became before the committee, but I'll defer to legal on that, what they think. I just think if it's public information and we're going to be debating it at the full council, then it's public information, but I'll defer to our legal recommendation in that regard.
so a motion to suspend the rules and ask legal for an opinion?
All in favor? Aye.
They're full of good questions this evening. Open meeting law, I know when it goes to anything more than a quorum needs to be presented to the public, whether it needs to be done here or in full council, I think is determined by whether or not you want to follow the rule to have the meeting on marijuana tonight or send it back to council as it's tabled in council. So either way, I think at some point it needs to be read in because it was a communication to the entire council. So it needs to be open to the public, but whether it's here or at the council meeting, I'm
I'd
unclear.
recommend it be put on, generally when we've had this issue before, it's been, that communication gets put on as a communication for the next
the
city
clerk.
council.
On the agenda.
Correct. And then the council can receive it as, that, cause, and that's available to the whole public.
Okay, well then I will stipulate that since it was sent to the full council, we won't read it into the record here, but we will receive it at the full city council meeting as an agenda item. And I'm not sure if the clerk has this for the agenda at this point. I'm just not sure where the flow went.
I can have it put into a communication from him if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so we've taken care of that as long as it can be satisfied in more than one way. I'm fine with that.
So I'll just make a, unless there's,
Counselor Lisi?
I do have
Oh,
a-
here, you need a microphone.
I do have a question about this reading of rule number 37. Again, it's the first time that I'm really taking a close look at it. But the way that I understand this is that this is a safeguard to say, you know, the city solicitor isn't going to put something into legal form if they object to it in some way. And basically, we had Crystal say throughout our meetings that she was questioning the 21-day interpretation. So she explained that point to us, and we continue to put things into legal form. So I just don't see the requirement of having to even acknowledge that. I mean, it seems like that
I agree, I think
The-
it's overkill, but isn't, I mean, by nature, we're so concerned, process that.
I mean, to me, it's like all the checkpoints here is that the solicitor made an objection. We decided to ignore the objection and send it along anyhow. There was a formal communication registered with the clerk. There was a legal form registered with the clerk. So I just,
Looks like we've already met all that.
I do think that we have.
I agree. I agree.
Then I would suggest that a motion to return it to the city council unchanged would be in order, and then we're done.
Just call me overkill, call it overly procedurally conservative, whatever. I agree with Counselor Lisi. I think the law department was clear. They have their view of this. We have our view of the process. And I think they've been clear as to what their position is. I think we've been clear on our position. This, by the way, is not the first time this issue's on this point has been before the body, many, in fact, numerous times in the past. And so I agree. I think we've already met the spirit of Rule 37. But just call it overkill. I would just say, make a motion to just say we acknowledge that we note the solicitor's objection, and we say that the council, the matter should remain unchanged for the council, and that the council should dispose of it as it wishes.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Any other further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
So that's 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Brings us to 3.
Mm-hmm. Take a motion.
Motion to remove 3 from the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, filed by Councilor Jordan, order that the city council create and adopt a new comprehensive ethics ordinance. We have language received tonight that Crystal brought in, and I did give a copy to Councilor McGivern, and I think, no, this is only part of it. This
is the campaign finance portion.
This is part. I didn't realize it, but did you get this part? No. Did you get this part?
Right now I did.
That I have.
You have, and do you have the main part?
I do. Do you, Dave?
I do not.
This is yours.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an extra of the second part? I guess Councilor McGivern may not have the second part,
Oh, I have one part. There you go.
okay? Everybody should have 2 parts, one that's entitled Ethics Ordinance and the other that at the top says Section 2-335, Requirements for Contracts Exempt from Competitive Bidding Process. So if you have all that, you have it all.
Could we take over for the expediency's sake, 2-335 portion first?
Councilor Jordan, you have the floor.
Okay. I'd like to, when Crystal's ready, I'd like to kind of walk through what already exists and then what we needed to change, because this was going to be, I think if I understood the law department correctly, we're on the 2-335 portion, Crystal. So we had the ordinance already on place. The question now was, what can we do to modify this in a more simplistic way to make it applicable to the contracts that we wanted it to apply to, which was those, I believe, was over the $40,000 limit per year of value. And then you wanted to have just an added sentence in there to clarify the applicability question, so that leaves no doubt, since we're taking the second look at it. And I believe you put a sentence in E3 which says this section shall apply to any contributions made from the time of this ordinance going forward by contractors with whom hold valid contracts with the city at the time of the adoption of this section. Okay. So that, we hope, clarifies any of that issue, right? And then, I remember there was a thinking that you wanted to put the 40,000 language and just put it all into this in terms of scope, or do we want to add it to the ethics portion, which looks like you accomplished in 2.6845 under a couple of the subsections there?
So under B3, you'll see that it's changed from 70,000 to 40,000 on the 2-335 language.
I missed that. Yeah, thank you.
Unfortunately, these ones aren't in color, so the red lines are harder to find.
Okay.
The only other thing that was changed is like a simple capitalization, and then the sentence that you read in, I hope, clarifies that it goes not only to contracts, but to contributions. And that was all that was changed here.
And so just so we're clear on that point now, Law Department, Holyoke City Council, that means heretofore, from now till a time immemorial and/or this ordinance is changed at, some date in the future, if that would be the will of the body, that it's no more donations if you meet this 40,000 or more contribution or value threshold.
That, for contracts that don't go out to bid.
Yes.
Correct. That's what we were trying to accomplish with the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got that. Now, let's dive into, so I think we're good on 2-335 with those two, at least from the Kevin Jordan angle of the world. And then we have the next bucket, which is the section, this ethics ordinance portion. Let's just touch, staying with that same topic, I want to make sure we don't conflict anything, or if that's here, we probably don't need it here.
So that was, if you look at my comments, I was trying to assist when you're reading this. 26853
Yep,
may conflict with the language of 2-335, because not only are you saying no contracts that don't go out to bid, but you're also saying any contract over 40,000. So it might make sense to have language in this that speaks the same of 2-335. And if you look in my comment, it says, no municipal official shall accept a political contribution from any person or business or city contractor holding any city contract in accordance with section 2-335 of city ordinances, to kind of tie those in together.
yes. So can I,
So we could probably void 2684, where it says any violation of section 2-335 shall constitute a violation of this section, since it'll be incorporated.
exactly.
I know it's complicated, there's a lot of
Lawyers
numbers.
are losing me.
Page
We're about what?
3?
Actually, it's the fourth page in.
Oh, sorry, there's stuff together.
So what you're suggesting is that under 2.685, we'll use the mirror language to the other ordinance?
Right.
Or do you want to just say there, any violation of 2-335 here, and then just, as opposed to what you have there as 2.6853? Would that be, just refer to it there?
So, correct, so we'd get rid of 2684,
Yup,
where it says any violation of,
yup,
and then where it says 26853, I like the language in the comment, that's up to you if you want to take it, but,
okay, so comment is, city, so holding any contract, yeah, okay, I like that, yeah, I agree with you, okay. So we'll do that.
So we're taking out the 40,000, all the details of the language and referring
Correct.
to this.
so there's no conflict between the two, you're not reading two separate ordinances. It's in
Exactly,
here.
we want them
Okay.
harmonious.
So we're Xing out the current language and substituting the comment? If that's what we do.
All right. Let's stay with the yellow highlight on 2.6854. So this reads, no municipal official shall accept a political contribution from any person or business or applicant who has any business before the city council, either while the matter is pending or for a period of 2 years thereafter. And how would you like us, you put in a highlight note here about saying potentially overbroad. So what would be preferential to you in terms of how you think we should limit the scope of that if you think it's overbroad?
It's hard to say because there's so many different matters of business that come before city council. I don't know where that threshold would be, where it would make people comfortable. But the theory being that if someone comes in for a simple special permit and they've also want to donate $50, this is saying they can't. When in reality, is that really an issue? Versus somebody coming in for a zone change of 13 parcels may have a little more influential
Yeah.
influence before the city council. So I don't,
So should we tie it to value?
I wasn't thinking well, yeah, has a, I don't know.
got contracts,
you?
so.
Huh?
How could you tie a contract to value? I mean, a zone
Yeah.
change to value.
Exactly, yeah, you really can't.
You also have the state ethics ordinance that's going to help regulate this as well,
Does it?
kind of.
How?
I'd have to, I don't know a section off the top of my head, but I know that they look at the interplay between,
Things of value and,
in kind and people who have, variance applications, et cetera.
right.
So it seems the only measure that we have to address the issue, even though it may be difficult to quantify, would be a value. What else would you have, or potential value? Do you know what I mean? What else would you have to measure it by?
So you're saying a cap on the donation amount then?
Well, I'm saying that if you have a zoning matter before you that everybody knows is worth millions of dollars, you may not be able to say, this deal is worth exactly $6.7 million, but you know it's worth millions of dollars versus hundreds of dollars of the person who's selling food from a food cart. I mean, this is not a, hard distinction to make, but it's more difficult to put it on paper to draw the line.
I mean, the worst-case scenario is we would no longer be able to get donations from people who are coming in for special permits or home occupations, or I'm not sure that's the end of the world to us.
So many people.
But then, right,
It's
how
just,
do
it
you
would be
keep
hard
track?
to know.
How do you keep track?
Well, if they're before us, I mean, that one's a real easy one.
But John Doe came in 2 years ago and asked for a special permit. Are you going to
And
remember
we
that?
renew them every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. It's really, it's so broad.
But on the other hand, if somebody's coming in for a renewal and then suddenly they're giving all the counselors $50 donations, that's a problem, and that's what we're trying to address here.
Well, and
I
how do you,
mean, the link between the two.
and how do you just start, I mean, do you want to start segregating out things, and it's hard to do, from home occupation permits to the person that's in with the multi-million-dollar zone change? I mean, it's hard to distinguish the two. To me, it just becomes, I guess, at that point, we just say, you know what, we'll live without the donation. Or we, yeah, I think, it just seems administratively, I don't see you're either not making the rule or you're making the rule so that people who are doing business here are not donating. And I guess we just got to suck it up and not take donations from people that are doing business with us.
Right, and I mean, it's not that we can't know, and it's not that they don't know. They know, and we know who the people are that are coming
Right,
before
or
us.
people who are coming in for pilots,
Absolutely.
and different things, making donations too.
No, but it also says for a period of 2 years thereafter. So you also need to be a fortune teller in that sense to know that somebody 2 years down the line is going to need a special permit or a zone change.
No,
it's-
it's thereafter.
Or after, so it would have been post
Not
the
prior
fact.
to.
So they would have came in pending or after, it's not or before.
Right,
Then I would agree with you, or 2 years before they came in, you wouldn't know that.
right.
But
But it's to avoid the, okay, you don't take the big donation now, you wait 6 months till after everything happens, and then you get the big donation. I mean, it's to get rid of that problem.
So I'd like to ask another question then.
Counselor Lisi?
So I think also a matter pending before the council is fairly ambiguous because I know that I came under a lot of attack for accepting contributions from individuals who do not have business pending before the body, but there are ordinances that are going to affect an entire industry. And that is, in my interpretation, not not a business before, this body. But I know in the media and other counselors definitely tried to interpret broad zoning matters for an entire industry as business pending from a particular donor.
Well, I think in that case, if you look if you look in that case to 268A, you would see that one should not be taking contributions from people that have a personal financial interest before you as on any decision that you're making. But I'm not your lawyer, and I think if you looked at that, you would also see that anybody who there's a requirement to file an appearance of a disclosure
Which
of
I
an
did.
appearance form. I have yet to see any on file.
It's on
I asked the
file.
clerks, maybe subsequent to all of this, but if you'll recall, I asked remember that little cute order of mine when I asked for everybody to make the voluntary disclosures? I had asked the clerk, had anybody as of that date made any filing of any appearances of a,
I made it on that date. I have a record of
okay.
it.
Because at that time I had asked her, and as of that date, she said nobody had. That's why I believe I made the statement, nobody had filed one, otherwise I would have looked them up. But you weren't the only one, by the way. There were others.
I know, but I just
But
think
the
that
point,
the
the
idea
point
of-
is, I think where we're going with it is, that whole situation doesn't make me feel comfortable. I've never seen that before. That is the granddaddy of them all, where nobody has thrown down that kind of dough. I've had people who said, and I had to send a check back a couple of years ago from somebody who had applied for a zone change here.
I did too.
Gave me a check for $250, wonderful person, never had made a donation to me before, and just said, hey, good luck in the campaign, here you go. It just happened to be voting on his item, coming up. So what did I do? I said, gee, thanks, but, I got to send this, I'm sending this back to you, no offense. Everybody's got to decide for themselves. But when people are laying down thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, I'm not here to judge you or anybody else, but on the same token, you gotta just, you gotta say to yourself, good Lord, they ain't buying, they think they're standing out here saying, well, I agree with them on an issue, or this is all about good government. They didn't pick your name out of a hat, That is to me influence peddling. That is absolutely what that is. That is people trying to walk into these ward elections and all this stuff saying, here you go, $2,500. Here you go, $2,500. You had one candidate, I think she or he raised about $800 or $900 other than the money given by this one corporation. You got people 900, 900, 800, 800, 700, 500. This is ridiculous. And I would pray it wouldn't influence anybody, but boy, it sure would lead the public to have that appearance. I think someone could make a pretty fair criticism. And this is the same with Room 1. I've got the same issue about why 2335 became necessary, because it'll be a cold day in hell before somebody here can influence me or make me believe that, I know my contract isn't subject to any competitive bidding. And I know, you just make decisions, Mr. Mayor, based on, whatever's good for Holyoke. I just so happen to have a contract coming up. Oh, and by the way, here's $10,000 for your campaign. Good luck in the election, Here's $5,000 for your campaign. Good luck, great for Holyoke. And then just coincidentally, this person is going to be deciding who gets the insurance contract, attorney contract, towing contract, fill in the blank contract. We're trying to root that stuff out, root and branch out of the government, because it's the old Tammany Hall days. It's not the black book, but pretty damn close. And we just need to be above all that stuff, because there's constantly people trying to tempt us.
Not seeing anybody else wishing to speak on this ordinance at the moment. Is there more that we need to cover for what we had pending
I
from
still would
last
like
time?
someone to explain this line about either a matter that is pending or for a period of 2 years thereafter.
Do you want to, under suspension of rules, ask Crystal to speak to that? We have a suspension of rules in effect, so perhaps Crystal would like to speak to that.
So I pulled up, I don't know if this is working. I pulled up the state ethics law, and under Chapter 268A, Sections 2 and 3, it speaks to basically being even just an employee and taking gifts or offers or promises for acts performed or to be performed. So that may cover some of this and let's leave it to the state rather than try and put something into our own words, because, I mean, the state law is also going to cover anything that happens in the municipality. And then it speaks to substantial value of, you know, gifts, et cetera, as,
$50 or more, right?
not less than $50, correct.
So that's a low standard.
Problem is, they don't consider political contributions. Is that considered a gift, or well, that could be considered something of value, certainly, right?
Right, why wouldn't it be, I mean, it's a monetary gift.
Right.
No, I think a gift is something that you receive that you don't actually like disclose unless it's something that you get that's greater than $50. That's why you want the disclosure. Under campaign finance law, there are laws that say you need to disclose all these contributions, and the difference is a gift is given to an individual as opposed to a campaign account. So I mean, I think that there is a strong distinction there.
We could add the language, any business before the council or for which they have a personal financial interest, which I think is where this 268 says. If we wanted to expand it to, you know, you're voting on this ordinance that's directly impacting my business, or you're regulating me. Do they have do we have a definition section on business? Yeah, you did. Means any corporation, business with which a person is associated. Means any business in which the reporting person, limited partner, is aggregate reporting. Yeah, I don't think we really define business as it relates to the word any business in
It
this.
says, I think doing business is the purchase, lease, or sale of goods or services in any transaction with the city or any department, agency, commission, or other part thereof. I don't know if that's what that was. And under gift, you have gift shall not include a political contribution reported as required by law. That's part of your definition.
Gift or contribution.
Which, just to clarify, according to the law that you just read, would be anything over $50?
For gift, but in the definition here, in this ordinance, it says that political contributions do not qualify as a gift.
So
Right,
then,
because we have its own definition for political contribution.
so then we need to leave the language in that addresses it.
Right, by using the word political contribution, right. State law already addresses gifts, right?
State law
Right.
also addresses
I think it's not quite as clear on the political contribution, maybe it is, I don't know. I think it is. I think they consider that something of value. Counselor Lisa, are you looking to, are you looking to expand the meaning of any business? I know that's what you're kind of focused on.
Well, I mean, again, the way that I understand what's written here, I'm not, proficient in legalese, but it says, no municipal official shall accept a political contribution from any person or business or applicant who has any business before the city council while that matter is pending, or for a period of 2 years thereafter.
After it's decided.
But we also want to make, now, this, when we're saying municipal official, we're referring also to the department heads and stuff too here, aren't we?
Elected or appointed?
Yeah.
Did we
Your
address that?
definition Q.
Yeah, Q, any person holding those positions. I think we should say any business before the city council, or should we should change that instead of just city council to their own boards, right? We would want that to apply to well, we're the only ones really getting political contributions, right? So we should change that to say, no municipal official, should say no city councilor.
It should say no elected official.
No elected
No
official.
elected official, yeah, okay.
But I still feel like this last line, while the matter is pending, or for a period of 2 years thereafter, meaning, so, you know, your favorite person, Joe Banana.
Yes, Joe Banana next year wants to give you a
He
donation
got his zone change
last year.
6 months ago.
Or a year later. Or
Right.
Jim Banana.
So Joe Banana makes a contribution to me, and then it also says that I would be in violation of this if Joe Banana, you know, 18 months later wants to have his own change. That means I needed to know the future, and I needed to.
No.
Because you will have already known, because the matter's in the past,
You already
right?
got
So
the
you
zone
voted
change.
on Joe Banana's zone change, and then 1 year later, Joe Banana says, hey, Counselor Lisa, you're doing a great job, you know? Here's a check for $1,000. You would be precluded from taking that donation.
Right, it'd be like an after-the-fact thank you for the vote. Could be perceived as.
It's while pending, so while the matter's before us, or for 2 years after, and the theory behind 2 years is the next election cycle, theoretically.
You could add, for a period of 2 years thereafter, the matter has been decided.
Okay.
Does that make more sense?
Does that make it
It's still a
less?
really overbroad paragraph, but
Yeah, I think that
I think that's a
I'm just
hard
not going to be on board with any changes at the end of the day.
Do we have more to go through?
Well, I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is that we think it's perfectly proper to take political contributions from people while they have business pending before us. I mean,
Just
what's the alternative to this? I mean, I'm willing to listen to alternatives, but it's either some people would actually call that quasi-bribe, right? That, you know, here's, it's not Rick Goyette in the envelope, right, who went to federal prison for 3 years. It's not quite that, I would hope. But if somebody says, hey, you're voting on my zone change next week, and here you go, here's 1,000 from me, and 1,000 from Mrs. Banana, and little Joey Banana, and little Janie Banana, and you just got $4,000. Oh, good luck on the campaign. We think that's proper?
Well, and
Isn't that the state ethics law that says you have to, you can't accept that, or if you do, you
Oh.
have to explain that there is that's the filing of the appearance of a conflict.
Right. The question there is, I feel one of the things that puzzles me or concerns me about the state ethics law is, and this is because it's more of an issue now that the contribution limits have been increased to 1,000, right? When it was 500, it was bad enough of a problem. It's only accentuated all this. This is why this is really bubbling up, is because the sheer quantity of money, you know. Ethics says, basically, you filed the disclosure and you feel that you can be still impartial in voting on that matter, you can vote. That is legal because the contribution was disclosed and you filed the appearance of conflict form, and you have determined. Not good enough in my book. Still not good enough. I feel that complies with the law, current law. I feel we're better than that. I feel somebody hands you a check for $2,000 and then the next week you go and vote on their matter. I feel that's inappropriate. I feel that we shouldn't be doing that. That's my opinion. That's how I'll be voting. Somebody thinks that should be fine. I'm willing to listen to the argument about why that's a good thing or why that's an okay thing. I tend to think that's not okay enough. That we here should ban that stuff, because what's the problem with the GTI? And this, by the way, is why, and I wish we're going to have to do something, or the council, it won't be me. The council should do something. This is why the Massachusetts State Legislature put a provision in the casino law that banned any casino officer, any of those people, from making any donation whatsoever to a municipal official. Complete ban. The view was, you come in, here, Mayor of Springfield, here's you know, everybody from, all these checks coming in from Nevada, you know, the whole thing. I mean, what the hell's the difference between that and what's going on with GTI and these other people? To me, I can't find, it's a distinction without a difference. These people are in here piling thousands into the campaigns in Holyoke. That is totally inappropriate, totally inappropriate. And I think this would, I'm not sure this is even broad enough, because I would like to expand it to say, or for which they have a personal financial interest. Not just any business. Because somebody could interpret it to say, that's not any business before us. It could be, it's that they have a personal financial interest in.
All set. Counselor McGivern?
I just love the state legislature with the gambling rule itself. Municipal officials, but state elected officials can take donations. You know, it's lovely. I'm not sure, because it's the ethics is very important on the state level, but because I do it for two reasons. I take the online test at least once a year. The gift part is a monetary gift or of value you cannot accept, which is what you have to be very careful of, whether you're an employee of the state or whether you're, an elected official or an employee of the city itself. That's a personal gift, which could come in the form of, someone who wants to do business with the city taking you out to dinner.
Or tickets.
Or tickets, game tickets, things like that. Those are things that you cannot accept to a certain, or you have to disclose. If they're the $50 or under, I think the number may have changed. The campaign contribution is governed through the campaign finance itself, which I think we all know we're very highly regulated, and we have to disclose, those type of contributions, whether it be a ticket for a fundraiser, which the ticket itself might cost $25, but by going to the event, the person putting the committee putting the event on is spending $12 per person to put the event on, from rental to food to refreshments and so on. So I think that's the campaign finance laws, and that's something which I think when we every time we file it, we have to make sure that we're doing the correct thing by that law itself. I think disclosure is the most important part as elected officials, that that we can do our jobs, and make sure that people understand that we are not putting ourselves in any ethical compromise before we make decisions or after we make decisions. But I think a lot of the language should mirror what the state does, except for those state elected officials. They can worry about themselves. But I think it's important that we, transparency is what we're trying to get at. And I, certainly am interested in the final product here and hope that it makes sense to all levels of government.
Thank you. I would just like to weigh in, because what I like about this language, in spite of the fact that it may be somewhat broad, is that it creates a level playing field. And I just hearken back to different times where we had people out protesting against Walmart, and I think, what would have happened if 6 people on the city council had taken 10 grand from Walmart when they wanted a zone change, or Lowe's when they wanted a zone change? And I think it's important that if we've generally conducted ourselves by a code of conduct historically, that if we need to codify it because now things have changed, because seemingly there's a good business and versus a bad business, so one's okay to take money from and the other is a bad thing to do. I just think it should all be the same. It should all be treated equally, and we should be consistent in what we all expect from each other as elected officials. And I think the whole pay-to-play issue is really bad, and I think it's undermining the trust in the voters. I think it's partly responsible for the apathy and the low voter turnout that we see, because I think people are starting to feel like, what difference does it make? This stuff's just going on, and they don't like it. And so I feel like it's a good government ordinance. Thank you. Counselor Bartley?
So I would just, I agree with everything everybody said. Madam Chair, I don't know if it made sense or not, but I think Counselor McGivern raised a good point that we're all supposed to take a
Ethics exam.
ethics click-off thing. I don't know if it's annual like Joe does. I think I do it every 2 years, but if Joe's doing it every year.
Work?
Joe's,
You're in the advanced class.
Joe is, yeah, he's definitely has a master's in ethics. But I like to have us consider thinking about some sort of an acknowledgement in this ordinance, if indeed we're going to move forward with it, that there's a requirement that any elected official would sign off as having received and read, or at least received a copy of this, and that for the ordinance, and on a biennial basis, that they sign off, and furthermore, that the clerk post the names of, you don't have to post official signature, for heaven's sakes, but the clerk should post on her website, under the political part where there's donations, the clerk should post all city councilors, or all elected officials who have indeed signed off as having received it. Does that make sense? Or,
Right, so
okay.
you can't say I never saw it.
oh, that's, you didn't know about it,
Right.
and furthermore, the clerk posts online that's been acknowledged by the particular political elected official. So that's my motion.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So you're leaving everything in 26854 the way that it is?
Well, I'm open to any suggestion you have. I was going to make a friendly amendment to add, has any business, we could say, has any business for which they have a financial interest before the city council. We could say, we could add that to it. That might be somewhat more limiting to a financial interest.
So you're saying who has a financial interest in any business?
Any person, business applicant who has any business for which they have a financial interest before the city council. So I'd like to add that clause, for which they have a financial interest.
Discussion?
How do you determine the financial interest, though? Would a zone change be looked at, so now your property value goes up? Is that now a financial interest?
Yes.
I think it'd be,
It
yes.
certainly is.
I think that would be
What
very
about someone
easy.
who wants a zone change to a more limited zone? I mean, is that a financial interest? I mean,
Potentially, yeah. I think so. I think what it would do is it would help if somebody had something about, somebody filed something looking for a parking regulation before the council that would eliminate all of those. You know what I'm saying? That type of situation. Things for which they don't have a personal financial interest. I mean, if you're concerned about scope, somebody says, I'd like to have no parking in front of my house, or I'd like to, a sign for a bus stop, or I'd like a sign for, 15-minute parking or something. We're not talking about that kind of business. We're talking stuff that has a financial interest.
so I'm just going to push back because I think that when we have people coming in and saying, I need a no parking sign over here, I need a 15-minute parking sign over there, that it is because it's going to have a financial impact on their business. The coffee shop, the flower shop.
That would be viewed as remote. I think if you went to the Ethics Commission on that, yeah, I don't think you're going to see people raising eyebrows. I think what they will raise eyebrows is stuff like, things people read about in the newspaper. I think that's exactly where, I think somebody can distinguish between somebody requesting 15-minute parking in their neighborhood versus somebody giving somebody, $2,500 in donations. while they have a pending matter before us.
But that's you're talking about two different sides of the argument. One would be the request for 15-minute parking, right? And then on the other side, you're talking about donations, but you're not talking about the donations on this side. I mean, what if the person, who wanted the 15-minute parking sign contributed at the maximum amount?
When was the last time that happened? Yeah.
I mean,
Then don't take it. Then you don't, yeah, right, the word, you don't get to take the donation then. If you really feel that, I would argue that's not a financial interest, but if you personally felt that was, then you wouldn't take it.
what about all of the downtown that's struggling for parking? Like, there are significant issues all along the Ray Street corridor with parking, and there are requests, I think, all the time for people to figure out more ways to have parking. Is it a parking deck? Is it this? Is it that? Like, people are trying to figure out what to do about parking all along that Innovation District area.
That would be fine. I wouldn't see that as a financial interest. If it's because they want to have 3 no parking signs put up on a street that they happen to have a home or a business on, I mean, that's pretty remote. And if you really felt morally at a crossroads on that, then don't take the donation.
But what if you actually think that area actually needs more parking, and so you're interested in advancing?
Then vote for their parking. Just
Yeah.
don't take money from them.
What if they want to contribute?
Then wait 2 years.
It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. It's just, there's nothing illegal about that contribution.
Well, that's what we're trying to do right now, is make it illegal.
But
That's why we're makers of law, makers of history. If we don't like the law, we've been empowered by the great people of Holyoke to change the law. So when people
you're trying
take,
to supersede campaign finance law with an ethics law.
no, what we're saying is that is not going to be the gold standard here in Holyoke, that is there, but that's the minimum, and you know how this works well. Those are the minimums. We can make it tighter, but we can't make it looser, but we can make it tighter. Just like, for example, we follow the open meeting law. Guess who's exempt from the open meeting law? Massachusetts General Court. We have to follow the public records laws. Who's exempt? The Massachusetts General Court. So is that the standard? No, that's not the standard. Funny how they, to Joe's point, they made us, state employees cannot directly solicit for campaign donations. Massachusetts General Court exempted themselves from that rule, even though they're state employees. So, my point is, we're going to be stricter than that. And what we're saying is, it's a problem in Holyoke, right? Because some would argue that if you went back in a time machine 60 years ago, there was rumors that you could go to a Chicopee or a Holyoke, and, if you needed something, you gave some money. And that's the way New York City used to work back, read Tammany Hall. And what we're trying to say is, in 2017, we're not going to be in a situation where somebody says, I got this matter, here, and it really affects my business, and, and by the way, here's a few grand for you, and we're going to call it a campaign donation. We're saying that we, at least me, and I think others, feel that should be precluded, that you shouldn't take that money.
I feel like it's disclosed, and the voters get to make that decision, just like,
Just like they get the disclosure 7 days before the election, and then they're able, that really disseminates around.
the media covered it, right?
Yeah,
I think
media.
we're getting into
Well,
a debate
it's,
here,
no,
and if,
yeah.
okay. If legal would like to weigh in, Crystal?
Just a thought that campaign contributions are a protected First Amendment right. Would this not be narrowly tailored enough to meet that standard?
Well, it's not, yes.
Saying that anyone doing business within the city council, it's something to think about.
I think it is because I would say yes. Certainly the people with the contracts, that's an easy one. Because that's you don't have to do business with the city of Holyoke, number one. But number two is, it's not a preclusion on them. It's a preclusion on it's a preclusion on the elected official from receiving the money. It's really a rule of the employee. What we're saying is, we will not take donations from anybody who has business for which they have a personal financial interest here before us. That's what we're saying. That to me is not a free speech issue. That is a ethics issue. And I don't think that would have any problem following the scrutiny of it, because one is you have to only show a legitimate public interest in order to overcome the burden. And what's the legitimate government interest? It's not like there's no legitimate government interest here. The legitimate government interest is we don't want people taking bribes, quasi-bribes, influence peddling, graft, call it what you will. We want a government that people are making decisions based strictly on the merits of the issue and not tainted by large sums of cash going to them and, conceivably in connection with their vote.
Thank you. And I would just like to weigh in. I think it's particularly egregious when there is something actively before the council being voted on and debated upon and coming back into committee and going back to the council. And the timeline is like vote money, vote money. I mean, this is what I'm totally in support of: preventing, stopping, ending. And to Councilor Jourdain's point, I received a $500 donation around a zone change matter that was going to be voted on in 2 weeks. And we all sign off on the ethics thing. And you can read the law and say, oh, legally, I could have taken it. And I've had people say, legally it's one matter and ethically it's another matter. And in the campaign finance office, they're just looking at the legality. And in the ethics office, it's a matter of, can you prove the connection? So I just think if the connection, if the average person can connect the dots and see a connection, I think we should create an ordinance that prevents that connection from being evident. So I'm not seeing anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter. Is there, there are a number of issues that have been discussed that we did not take action on under 2.68.5.3, where our attorney recommended we eliminate the language and adopt the recommended. I didn't know if anybody wanted to make a motion on that or not.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that it read, no municipal official shall accept a political contribution from, and then any, deleting the words person and forward, and substituting in the language that the law department suggested, any city contractor holding any city contract in accordance with section 2-335 of the city ordinances.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, and then on 2.6854, no elected official, so substituting the word municipal to elected, shall accept a political contribution from any person or business or applicant who has any business for which they have a financial interest before the city council, either while that matter is pending or for a period of 2 years thereafter. So adding that.
Did you want to add thereafter the matter has been decided, or leave it at thereafter?
That's what that says, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree it's redundant, but nonetheless.
if that makes people feel comfortable, I'm willing to do that, yeah. So just that one clause, for which they have a financial interest after the word business, and before the word before.
Second.
And is the matter has been decided in or out?
People up. Better, you think, law department?
Yes.
Okay. And then adding after, thereafter, has been decided. Great.
Thereafter, the matter has been decided?
Thereafter, the matter has been decided.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
All opposed. I think it's overly broad.
4-1 on the amendment. Are there any other amendments?
Let's just keep going through the document. So we got B, so it's going to be no employee of the city shall simultaneously serve on the city council during their term of employment. So we got that one in there. That looks good. A violation of this chapter in connection with the issuance of any permit, license, ruling, determination, or other official action shall be grounds for revocation thereof. That looks good. All city contracts following termination, bidding, awarding, yeah, I thought the law department did a nice job with that. Absence of the clause shall not negate the validity of the section, that looks good. Here's the next one, E, and I know, Crystal, we had briefly discussed the issue of the 10 taxpayer lawsuit. One of the things that we'd like to talk about is the enforcement provisions. So, starting with, giving citizens a private right of action to have legal standing to institute a civil action to recover damages on behalf of the city. So, the proverbial public employee runs off with the company store and takes the bags of money on the way out the door. Taxpayer could institute a civil action under this. This is the way it was in another city's ordinance. The law department was originally recommended striking this. This isn't that we would represent these people. They would have to take their own private right of action, but this would give them standing to file an action. There is, I think, also 10 taxpayer lawsuit provisions in the state law. I haven't read those recently, but for different things. What's the concern here on this language?
The concern being that we don't represent the taxpayers individually, and giving them legal guidance as to how to file suit maybe shouldn't be part of an ordinance from a legislative body.
Well, we're not giving them
Is that what
legal
this says,
guidance,
though?
we're only giving them standing to sue.
Well, you said yourself that the state law gives them standing.
So should we just refer to the state law?
Well, I mean, you're under the state law anyways. We don't necessarily have to refer to it. I think just providing legal guidance in an ordinance is not necessarily something that.
Well, I haven't read that state law recently. Is that the 10 taxpayer lawsuit provision? I mean, I haven't read that recently. That was always Charlie Smith's big one. I don't know, you guys probably remember Charlie Smith. I'll file a 10 taxpayer lawsuit, you know. He was always threatening to do that. I don't know if he ever did or not, but this is basically just saying that they could file suit for people that violate this to institute a recovery on behalf of the citizens.
I would just add that I like language that empowers the citizens if it doesn't encumber
Yeah,
the
no.
legal department, because that's what, we're supposed to be representing the citizens, and if they become aware of some level of corruption, that they want to take an action
But they don't need our legal
about.
department to give them that standing.
No, we need to give them the standing by law.
Right. That's why Framingham did it, so that they could have jurisdiction. In order to bring a lawsuit, you have to have standing. And generally, it's, do you have harm that has occurred to you? Actionable harm, in order to have standing in court. So, it can't be theoretical, can't be remote, it can't be of a general nature like everybody else. So, somebody steals from the treasury of Holyoke. Do I have standing to bring a lawsuit because somebody stole my tax money that I pay property tax? Court would say no. Maybe the city did. City would probably, because we're, you know, the mayor or somebody could probably bring one. But what these 10 taxpayer actions say is, it's almost like a private attorney general theory, is that citizens can, if they got 10 of them together, say, we, citizens of Holyoke, are impacted. We have standing to bring a suit to try and recover the, $1 million somebody stole from the city of Holyoke, or somebody walked off with $100,000, or stole a piece of property, or something like that. They would have an action to be able to sue.
But Al, I guess all I'm saying is they don't need the city council to give them that standing.
Yeah, in law, you have to have standing, otherwise you don't have it. That's,
Yeah, but, I mean, isn't the whole 10 taxpayer rule the state statute that says any 10 taxpayers can create?
yeah, I just want to make sure there's no
Crystal's
limitation. If that's the case and it's covered, then I'm fine with not duplicative. I just noticed that Framingham put this in their ordinance,
And
which
that's
made me
interesting.
think, well, why, if it's just covered by a state law, then why did they put it in their ordinance? And what's nice about this is it does create sort of a mediation step in between, which is to say, people could raise the issue and then it could be remedied. And if it's not remedied, then they go forward with the lawsuit.
It's an accountability track.
I, at this point, would rather keep it in. If the law department gets more information by the next council meeting that you really think it's covered, I'd be open to just citing that state law. If, we don't need duplication in it. But at this point, I'd like to make a motion that it remain.
Well, it's not out.
Yes, it is actually in the draft. It was redlined. So I'd like to make a motion to restore it.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Crystal, if you get some more info on that between now and next Tuesday, just let us know, and hoping to change that. In terms of the overall violations and penalty section, I think we got some good stuff in here about advisory opinions if people are looking for information. Do we think this has enough teeth? Any employee, municipal official who violates this chapter,
Where are we?
I'm on 26812, towards the back of the document.
6, 8, 12.
It's I think it's one page. One before the 10 taxpayer, yeah. Sorry, we skipped,
Okay.
just kind of slid back a little bit. Any employee or municipal official who violates this chapter will be subject to appropriate discipline, including suspension, termination, or censure, consistent with any of the requirements of state civil service law or the city charter, as well as to civil or criminal prosecution under any of the applicable state laws. Is there anything else that we wanted to do in terms of any other enforcement other than that? I guess, if you had the municipal official, I mean, what's the concern is having enough teeth, I want to make sure we have a strong enough enforcement provision. I think we got good teeth on the contractors. I think we have the 10 taxpayer piece. I suppose it would be a matter of censure, I guess, basically, for elected officials. So we don't have a removal clause. We don't have a recall provision. It's a whole, at some point, the charter and rules are have to.
How do you enact censure?
We just have to pass a resolution, I guess. We can call you bad names and say you're not doing a good job, but, well, but I'm talking something official, not just people shouting out or yelling at each other on Facebook. But that would be basically what you could do, to the mayor or to a city councilor that doesn't comply with these rules.
Like a vote of no confidence that
Yeah.
folks do.
Yeah, right. That's one of my concerns about it is that enough? Unless, the only other thing I will say that is nice is this says prosecution or civil action. I mean, what about like orders what about standing, like Superior Court orders or something like that to get people to return monies or things that are in violation of the ordinance? So say somebody takes the proverbial, $5,000 donation from so-and-so, and when they weren't supposed to, do you feel this gives us enough that if the city council or the mayor or whoever wanted to bring an action in court to get either an order of mandamus or some sort of declaratory action to make them pay it back? Do you think there's enough teeth here to do that?
The scenario that you're breaching, though, would put them in violation of the state law, too. So, I mean, then the state...
No, well, you got 5 $1,000 donations. I don't think there's a state action there, right? I think it would be under this ordinance. I just want to make sure we got enough teeth in here that, say that, Mayor Jones 10 years from now says, a pox on your ordinance, I wish to keep receiving my bags of cash in the form of donations.
Other remedies, the city or any city agency may maintain an action for injunctive relief to enforce any provision of this chapter.
Where is that?
Oh, okay. The city or any city agency may maintain an action for injunctive relief to enforce,
Remedies.
and for an accounting, for any receive or may recover damages for violation, okay, may maintain an action for injunctive relief. Okay, there you go. That's good. I'd like to amend that to just say, just for clarity, the city, any city agency or the city council. So I'd like to make that as a friendly amendment, to add the words
There a second?
after city agency or the city
Any
council.
discussion? All in favor? Counselor McGivern?
What would be the definition of a city agency?
Let's see, is that in the definition section?
City council, any department or other administrative unit, commission, board, or other division of the city government.
Because essentially, and I understand the teeth part, Kevin, but essentially what you're also opening up doors to is agencies of the city or part of government spending money without approval. And that scares me. Anybody doing this for political gains, also scares me. And I don't see the control or I just hate to see, a lot of political, play, by someone employed by the city or by elected officials against other elected officials.
This would be for court action. I mean, if this was something that was frivolous or strictly for some political gain, I mean, courts are going to weed that type of stuff out, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to bring seek an injunctive action order, which are hard to get, by the way, because, well, we're just doing it because we don't like Susie Q. Well, that's not going to fly. Somebody would have to be in violation of this ordinance in order for that to happen.
I get it, I agree, except the damage can be just with the going forward, and not, even before the court would make a decision. I also think we're getting into a charter here, because currently only the mayor can initiate any court action.
Well, you and I both already know that's not true. We've already done it, and Judge Carey already
We
said.
did it on our own.
Right. Well,
And we did it out of our own pocket expense.
which, by the way, we didn't have to, by the way. There's a law on that. We were nice, but we could have actually sent the city a nice legal bill for that. I don't know if they realize that or not, but we're very charitable
Because they
people.
lost.
But
No, period.
And we'd have to disclose that with the state ethics commission and do all this stuff.
But we're nice and generous people. But
I'm just questioning. I'm not,
just as a point of information, the definition that Counselor Lisi just read in, agency means the city council. any committee
Oh,
or other subdivision.
Okay, then we
so
don't need the amendment then.
It's already there.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Great point. But just on the greater point here of, these are legitimate issues. Your concern is city agencies or somebody, yeah, frivolous stuff. Well, I think it would have to be a meritorious claim, and I think the point that I think we're looking for is there to be people remedying these problems before they would ever get to that stage, I would hope. I would hope that people would say, okay, I'm giving the money back. Or, which is what 2-335 says, basically you're supposed to give the person an opportunity to fix it.
Hang on, our legal would like to. Yes, Crystal?
Under opinions, maybe that would relieve some of the issue, because you would have to first,
What section are you in?
advisory opinions, 26811. So
Yep.
any employee or municipal official shall be entitled to the opinion of the city solicitor upon any question arising under this chapter. So I don't know if to me, it would seem like that would be the first step. You'd find out if somebody is in violation before going to a lawsuit.
I would hope so.
I think the steps are there.
Yeah. I mean, I think there would be a determination. I think the council, certainly, I'll speak for us, I would hope that we would review it with the law department and say, what do you think on this?
Just a question, and I can't remember if it's in here or not at this point. Did we say that this would take effect upon adoption? So
Yeah.
there's no timing question? We fixed that, right?
Yes, I believe so, right? That's usually standard boilerplate unless we say otherwise, right?
But that
You'll put that
question
at the
did
end.
come up.
Oh, yeah. Would take effect upon passage. You'll put that in the final legal opinion, right, Crystal? Yep. Thank
In
you.
the legal form. I
That is-
think it's in here, I just can't see
It's
it.
not, because that's on her that's on
Oh.
that's on the standard legal form boilerplate.
Okay,
Takes effect upon adoption. Then there's another one that's usually something like, this repeals any provisions that could conflict with what has just been adopted, type of thing.
okay, so if people feel we have run through it, what I'd like to do is, Counselor Lisi?
I'm going to have just two final points. I hear you
Oh,
wrapping
sure.
up, right? So the two final points that I want to make are, number one, I want to just piggyback what Counselor McGivern was just saying, in that even though there is the requirement for an advisory opinion to initiate a lawsuit, I think that the initiation, so without even coming to a determination, but initiating the questioning is something that could be potentially used for, influencing political outcomes. So if you even just raise the question, all of a sudden you're going to start painting someone in a negative light, begin a matter of controversy around them, even without there being a final opinion coming out of the legal department.
We're certainly seeing a lot of that at the federal level.
And then finally, the last thing that I want to say is, I'm going to just use this analogy that I remember Chief Scott used to use. And he would talk about crime, and if you start putting pressure on, so crime, he would say, is like a balloon. So if you start putting pressure on one part of the balloon, meaning increased police presence, the crime moves to a different part of the balloon. The air moves to a different part of the balloon, right? So you start pushing here, and the crime moves to another part. And I do see a lot of the additional layers of regulations on campaign finance in particular to be of a similar nature. So you put pressure down on, how much money people can collect in a disclosed and transparent manner. And I think that's where you see the eruption of dark money, which I think is far more nefarious and dangerous for democracy and governance than fully disclosed, out in the open contributions. And I think that we had begun to see a lot of that in advance of Citizens, because there were all these, dark money PACs making contributions that were untractable, or, people spending money on campaigns without being able to identify who is spending that money. And I think that more than anything else, you want things to be transparent, you want things to be disclosed, and you let the voters decide from there. I think if you start putting these, pressure points on the way money's coming in, and you start to limit the way money comes in, it goes underground. And I'm just using the analogy from Chief Scott because I do see it in a similar fashion.
Well, I'm just going to chime in on that one, and I'm going to go by the old rule. My mother said 2 wrongs don't make a right. They're both wrong, and if we can only control what we can control, we can't control federal PACs, but we can control our local conduct.
It's not about the PACs, it's about the dynamic of dark money and money that is not disclosed coming into your politics and into your elections, as opposed to things that are fully disclosed.
We've got to get to a point where we're not taking these kind of donations, disclosed or non-disclosed. Here's part of the problem. Disclosure is not enough. Some may feel disclosure is enough. I do not feel. Here's why. This notion that, oh, well, as long as I just disclose it, then it's all good. Here's why. It's harming the democracy. One of the points that was failed to be mentioned in the colloquy a moment ago was, what's the downside to Citizens United? It wasn't about corporations being able to disclose the money that they're giving, as opposed to 547s and things of that nature. No, it was that corporations could even make the donations to people. Because the view is that these corporations are extremely wealthy, and therefore if they start handing thousands, millions, who knows, to particular political candidates, what does that create for the democracy? Here's why this is a problem in Holyoke and why disclosure isn't enough. If you have one candidate, let me back up because I think it'll really hit the point home. One of the things we all agree on is you shouldn't use public funds to fund campaigns. I think we all agree, right? Nobody would say, take money from the Treasury and make a donation to a candidate for it. What we have now is, I give you a contract that is for public funds, and you're making donations to me, and then I award you this contract. So they're taking the proceeds of this and giving it to me. It's just creating an intermediary step. So this person says, here's your contract for $250,000 to sell insurance in Holyoke. Oh, and by the way, here's $10,000 for your campaign. Here's a $250,000 tow contract, and by the way, here's $10,000 for your campaign. Here's a $20,000 legal services contract. Oh, and by the way, here's $4,000 for your campaign. It's a transfer of public funds effectively for a political purpose. Point 2. How does that harm the democracy? If you have candidate 1 who has and is starting in some of these elections with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more than candidate B because they're the incumbent and can be the beneficent one handing out these municipal contracts and are able to leverage that and get a pile of money fully disclosed, how is it fair that we have an election where this person starts with $20,000, $30,000 more than candidate B? That's not democracy. That's no different than the Koch brothers mailing in somebody $1 million donation. But yet I'll hear certain quarters of our society say, Citizens United, the great curse, But yet on the other hand, GTI can come in and say, here's $4,500 for this one, $2,500 for this one, $2,500 for this one, and now the candidate to those people have to run, but they get the benefit of this in the campaign. So now they're running against people that have this extra cash to win and influence the election, okay? That's not okay. That's not how I expected Holyoke to operate. Apparently that's the way Holyoke operates today because, and what concerns me is, it was never to this exponential growth because the cap used to be $500 a person. Now it's $1,000. Hell, you can find the husband, the wife, the kids, the grandma, the brother-in-law who's a so-and-so out in another part of the state. This is what's going on in Holyoke. And it ain't gone by me. I'm fully aware. I'm a fairly sophisticated person. I can read finance reports. These people are not giving this money because they just love good government. Bullshit. That is not what's happening. What's happening is it's influence peddling. It's quid pro quo. They would not be making these donations but for the fact that they have these contracts. Therefore, it is an influence on the democracy. It needs to be prohibited. Disclosure is clearly not enough because you disclose the fact that this one has 30 and this one has 0. It is still, by virtue of the fact that we know how campaigns work, this person doesn't have the money to get their message out to tell all the citizens, hey, do you know what's going on? You got to wait for Mike Plaisance to hopefully get the story out. That's not what we're supposed to be doing here. And by rooting this all out, we are contributing greatly to the democracy of Holyoke. And I would think that other communities should consider doing the same.
Are folks ready for me to run down the amendments at this point? Oh, Crystal, yes?
There was one more comment that wasn't touched on, and I just want to
Oh, thank
make
you.
you aware. 2689, section B, where it says no employee of the city shall simultaneously serve on the city council during their time of employment. I did some research because obviously candidacy is also a protected right. It's across the board, it varies. There's many arguments that say it's constitutionally protected to run for candidacy. So in this instance, to be more strict than the state law could raise some legal issues. The state law being the crossed out version that basically states, well, you could be employed, you just can't vote on anything that you have an interest in. So that was my 2 cents there.
So just a clarifying question, if I could. So there's nothing in here that would prevent them from running. It's just that if they won, then they'd have to make a choice.
Right, but that's also prohibitive because you could say that if you're going to run, now you have to lose your job.
Well, if you prevail, you would know.
I mean, it's prohibiting people from running for candidacy, which,
Okay.
mincing of words, I guess, but.
Okay, all right.
But technically, though, it doesn't prohibit you from running. We've had people run, i.e. George Cruz, who ran, and at the end, he makes a decision to, I'm going to keep my DPW job, and I'm not going to become the Ward 1 city councilor, right? So, again, I'm open to suggestions on this, but I don't see, other than a ban, how you make this work. Here's why. This notion that you just don't vote on things that affect your department, you can't clean yourself of the situation. You work for a department head and you're on the city council, and now anything that comes before them, you're under total influence, whether it's related to your department or not. You're an employee of that department. Then they'll say something like, well, you just don't take the other salary. Well, that's not enough to clean the taint. Here's why. Well, because, I'm not saying this occurred, but it very easily could occur. Hi, Officer so-and-so. I know you're a city councilor, and you won't take the $10,000 to be a city councilor, so, boy, you sure are a great public servant. By the way, would you like those extra road jobs? Would you like the extra overtime? Would you like the other things that would get you basically the equivalent of the $10,000? That's the type of stuff that could go on. Preferential treatment, objectivity, department heads work for the mayor. Therefore, even though you're not voting on, say you're just in the economic development office and you're an employee there, okay, so you don't vote on things related to the economic development office, but on the other hand, everything that the mayor is going to bring in, he is basically your boss's boss. How do you divorce yourself and make yourself independent of that? There's no way. That's why I don't see any way. I also feel the charter has already spoken to this issue. It says you shall hold no other office in the city if you're a city councilor.
Well, that's clear enough.
To me, it is, but it didn't work at one point 10 years ago, because after the George Cruz thing, I thought that was what they hang their hat on. They basically, as far as I know, told George, it's one or the other, sir. Which one do you want? And at the end of it, he picked DPW. Somehow along the road, 10 years later, Don, great guy, but he was a police officer and sitting on the city council at the same time. And they went on this, well, just don't take the two salaries and, it's all good. Well, that ain't good enough for me. I feel the city charter already speaks to this issue, and this just, to me,
affirming it.
affirms that, what the charter says.
You include special employees? So you're talking the guy who wants to coach a basketball team in the city?
I thought we added language on that.
Yeah, we had put in an amendment on specials.
It was proposed, but I think you guys had decided just an all-out ban, so that's how it looks here.
Okay.
So you don't see the special employee language in? I remember
currently
going
not in
back and
here.
forth on it. I don't remember the ending.
So somebody would have to make an amendment on that if they want to do it. Do you want to do that or not?
What's the will of the body?
I kind of think it's okay, but here's why. It requires a separate vote of the city council. Under the state law on special employees, the city council would have to vote to allow you to become a special municipal employee. If the city council didn't want you to do it, the
So
council
it's
would have a
not-
subsequent vote, because to become it, there's a whole there's a whole law section on 268A about how you can become a special municipal
We
employee.
vote on that for you for the
Correct.
announcing or something?
That's exactly correct. So, absolutely. And we had to do it for Dave Guzman as well when he was tax
Right.
collector. So he's the
when he
football
was
coach.
employed,
When he was employed.
full-time.
Exactly.
So, Crystal, what do you think?
It's not my decision.
Well, no, but
You
you
have
have an
my comment.
opinion. I mean, do you think it's creating a problem if we separate out one type of employee versus another?
I mean, I think doing so much of a ban creates a problem. That was my opinion here. That's why the comment's there.
Oh, is there a motion on it?
Whatever, it's
Not hearing
it's
one.
not going to affect me one way or the other, so whatever you guys want to do. But
I'm not hearing one, so I'm
Just
going to
leave it as
assume there
is.
is not one. Okay, so let me just run down what I have and make sure we're all on the same page for amendments tonight. So I have one amendment that we have accepted the recommended language under 2.68.5.3. No municipal official shall accept a political contribution from any city contractor holding any city contract in accordance with Section 2-335 of city ordinances.
Oh, hand in hand with that, Madam Chair, we have to delete that 2.684, which is any violation of 2-335 shall constitute a violation. That can be deleted because that's duplicative of what we're just including it based on the law department's
Did we,
recommendation.
and I do believe we made that part of the motion.
I'll make it
To the
just,
amendment, do you want to make that as an?
I'll make that as a
motion?
motion to delete
Is there a
that
second?
sentence.
All in favor? Aye. So we are deleting section 2.68.4.
Do you want to see that as reserved or something? Is that what would happen, so I don't have to renumber it, or does it matter?
I would just renumber it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, then, next, under section 2.68.5.4, we have amended no municipal to now state no elected official. We have added, after the phrase, no elected official shall accept a political contribution from any person or business or applicant who has any business for which they have a financial interest before the city council, either while that matter is pending or for a period of 2 years thereafter the matter has been decided.
Yep.
Then we further amended to leave in section E in its entirety.
Correct. and I withdrew my motion on 2.6813 because city agency already included city council.
Correct, so that is,
That was
I'm silent
withdrawn.
on that.
That
We
was
do
withdrawn.
have with legal pending that, checking with state law relative to section E. But right now, the language is in. And then the last amendment is that we have added a portion of the ordinance that will require a sign-off of receipt and review of the ethics ordinance by each elected official that will be posted by the city clerk
Website.
on the website. If anybody has anything else that I have not listed,
Did we include special employee?
we did not.
Okay.
So,
So,
question is,
Counselor Jordan,
there was one thing in here about prohibited acts of city councilors and school committee members regarding making loans, gifts of value to different other people in the city positions. Did we have one of those for the mayor, department heads to the city councilors?
No, and looking at the others, they didn't either. This is
Okay.
pretty close to, I know we looked at Springfield. This mimics it pretty well.
Okay. All right. Let's see, employment.
so city councilors can still give each other money.
Yes, theoretically.
It's only $100 between campaigns.
Well, no, I'm talking personally.
Personal.
You could give each other a loan of
1,000, right?
unlimited. Say I wanted to loan you, forget, that's only 100 is donations, campaign to campaign.
Campaign, but it would be 1,000.
But just say I wanted to
Person to
say, hey,
person.
Rebecca, you're short on money, you want to borrow $1,000? I could loan you no, just personal, just on a
But you
personal.
could also write her a personal check for $1,000.
Yeah, I could gift you any amount of money,
Up to the.
just
cap.
can't do it for a campaign.
Up to the cap.
You buy me a drink?
Everybody knows I'm too cheap for that.
You did once in the last.
I did, yeah. You'll get one out of me at some point. I gotta see how good this plaque is. I'm supposedly gonna. We'll judge it. The drinks will be prorated based on
Diet
the
Coke, Diet Coke. if
size
you're
of
lucky.
the plaque or trophy.
Okay, so before us, we have the ethics ordinance and the section 2-335, and we have the amendments that we voted tonight as read. So a motion would be in order.
Motion to adopt as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No.
No, I'm just kidding.
So it is it's adopted to recommend to the city council 4-1. Thank you all.
Is that was,
think we had,
and five, so we got Toby here for item
I'm sorry?
5.
Toby's thing is on the table still for it. That's why he's.
It is tabled, I don't know if,
Okay, motion to remove
So we're-
item 5 from the table. The
Okay.
poor guy's been waiting here.
all in favor?
Aye.
Well, we were waiting for Crystal to find the answer.
Oh, there was an answer, okay.
Yes, there was a question.
There is an answer, and it's actually a pretty easy one. In the zoning ordinance 798, I believe, any change in ownership regarding the solar facilities is just a notification to the planning board of the change, including the contact information
Okay.
of the new owners.
Okay. So then we have before us the pilot agreement, and the only other question that this just came up recently, and I didn't want to keep it sitting in the jacket too long, but we have not had a chance to talk to assessors to say what would the taxes be
Yeah, we have to ask
if
him.
we didn't have the pilot agreement. So that would be the only other piece of
What's
it.
the pilot agreement? What's it say?
The pilot
You seen it?
agreement.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
If, hang on a second. The pilot agreement is attached. It just came to us on November 21st.
Yeah, that was the one Todd
Sad looking microphone.
I'm sorry?
It's a sad looking.
Yeah,
Oh,
It's a very sad microphone.
it is. This is.
so we've had the first question answered. We haven't had a pilot agreement before us in a while. The assessors had weighed in maybe a year or two ago as to the impact of the pilots compared to regular taxation.
Was this something that somebody else had?
Yes,
Okay,
this was the other one on Kelly Way.
okay.
That
Was,
505
SHR
Kelly
had.
Way.
oh, so SHR had this one,
Yes,
and now they
yeah.
sold it to this company?
SHR couldn't get the financing to buy it. These people came in and found out about it and.
Jumped on it?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they never did it, and we never did a pilot.
I thought you did on this. I wasn't sure where we went with the pilots. I looked through my file and I didn't see one.
Okay.
So, but I believe it was presented
Okay.
because they were all presented at one point.
Okay.
The only two that I know were not.
Then I think we may have.
Because
Then,
the only
because
two-
we did the ones that were in the approved zone.
Yes. The
That's
only two that
my recollection.
The only two that I remember not being were the one that,
In the RA.
yes, or two, actually, yes. So.
But I
believe this one was done.
I-
I just can't, when I drew this up and talked to everybody, I didn't, so, and I wasn't sure if the pilot itself was able to be transferred to somebody else, so
wanna
that's,
And did we get an answer on that? I mean, maybe this is moot.
I'm sorry, what?
I mean, maybe we don't need to approve the pilot.
Well, the first question is, did we have a pilot? And then the second question is it transferable without a
Right.
vote of the council?
Mr. Jordan, it would definitely, I filed on all the solar projects that SHR did, we filed a pilot.
No, I know you filed
I
it, but did we
believe-
approve it?
I believe we approved.
I know we approved
the-
some of
The
them,
two solar pilots that were in the industrial zones.
which is
but
this one, which
that's
is Kelly
one.
Way, okay.
There's two on Kelly Way, and there was one on Mobala.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those were approved.
I believe they were also. So the question again is, does this need to be before us if it is going with the permit?
Yeah, because
The overly conservative.
Okay,
right?
so now we're going.
Conservative
now we're
on
going the other way,
process?
Okay.
is this exactly the same wording as the old one?
It's the exact same yes, same amount and everything.
Oh, yeah. So but there are name changes in there.
Correct.
Yes,
The party, yeah,
the
the
parties changed,
holder of it is this new company.
right.
So,
I'll make a motion to be approved, assuming it's based on your representation,
It's
all
the
the
same-
same terms, just a different party name.
Cut and paste, Mr. Jordan.
Got it. All right, make a motion to be approved.
it's right
It's
here.
right here, here you go.
Thank you.
I see the 5,000 per megawatt, that rings a bell. That's pretty much the standard going rate.
Okay, so we have a motion before us to adopt. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks for letting us resolve that. So there is, huh?
Absolutely.
So-
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor? Aye. No debate on that. Thank you all.